too.
Thank you.
Annie will give us a little context for this, and it's a riveting story, and some of the imagery in this documentary is very riveting. I'm going to be very interested to see how it's developed as a document, and the plans that she has to give us a brief summary of, and it's just a touching problem, and it's just a tip of the iceberg example of all of the various types of camps around the world where people are being sequestered because they had to flee a situation that was untenable for them, and they had tried to land in a place of opportunity with the desire to fit in and engage and be productive, and this is the fate that awaits them.
Thank you, Dean Tweedio. Thank you for inviting us here. So as we gather to look back at the last 70 years, the changes made and influence of this declaration on the lives of human beings globally, we recognize the great strides forward, but it would be irresponsible to not recognize the grave atrocities happening every single day and violations of the principles within the document's 30 articles. My name is Anna Grazia. I'm a journalist, former television reporter, and now documentary filmmaker. I'm one of those people that feels like the UN's 193 member nations have not been loud enough. And since I have a platform and a voice, I have chosen to use it. It was November 2017 that I arrived to Moria refugee camp located on the island of Lesvos, Greece, just 4 miles off the coast of Turkey. I was a media volunteer for a Dutch NGO nonprofit, committed for 2 months. But within days of arriving, I had already called one of my former colleagues, telling him about what I saw and asking if he would be willing to shoot an undercover documentary. After my assignment was over, he said he was in. And I also met a Dutch journalist, an amazing Dutch journalist who had been working in the camp for 5 months with the same NGO. And she was also a refugee expert, and she decided to also join our team. This camp was a military base. Media was not allowed, so we knew it was a great risk that we were taking. We watched journalists get arrested, footage confiscated while we were there. We smuggled in cameras, lights, drones, small GoPros, and we were never caught. Oftentimes it felt like every close call that we had, that there was some kind of like divine intervention saving us from getting arrested. While we shot the film, there was about 7,000 people living inside Moria, a space that's meant for closer to 3,000. Now there's even more. At the time, there were 600 unaccompanied minors, families, elderly, very vulnerable populations. Our film is called Asylum Seekers Moria. The overarching theme is the aftermath of the EU-Turkey deal, which in short was a controversial agreement between Turkey and the EU in March 2016. The deal was signed requiring Turkey to protect their borders, and in turn, they would get 6 billion euros and free visa travel to Europe, amongst other things. This document was opposed by many NGOs, including Doctors Without Borders, or MSF. MSF was concerned with the humanitarian consequences following the deal and precautions for the asylum process. In response to the signing, they chose to pull out of Moria and operate outside the camp. Unfortunately, MSF predictions came true, and the humanitarian consequences were even worse than expected. The people within Moria are very vulnerable populations, people who have been exposed to torture and ill treatment in their countries of origin, including Syria, Iraq, Afghanistan, Iran, Cameroon, Congo, Togo, Somalia, and the list goes on and on. During their journey to Greece, many experience even more torture, sexual violence, and trafficking, especially in Turkey. The journey across the sea is dangerous and traumatic, and then once they arrive to Moria, mentally and physically, all of those issues become even greater. Suicide attempts are frequent, even amongst small children, especially those who have been stuck in the camp for years. I'm sure many of you think it's just the lack of shelter and sanitation, that's the issue in the walls of Moria, but it's also the administrative process, which I believe, I'm not a doctor, but I believe it causes even more psychological damage. They are in an administrative detention, an open prison, stuck on an island until told otherwise. And this camp is not built to house this population. This asylum process is just like any other form of torture by politicians using EU taxpayer dollars. Many of you may ask, why should we care? We live so far away. Well, I was taken back by the amount of people who were displaced because of US involvement in their nations, and accountability has to be taken. Today, Moria is over capacity, healthcare is even worse, and most recently, EU officials have pressured the camp staff to clean up or they'll shut it down, which is what we want. However, that was over 30 days ago, and that promise has already been broken. Now, what's the answer? Opening the island, not criminalizing movement, restoring this declaration of human rights, not sweeping violations under the rug for policy. Recognizing a sustainable way to manage migration. It is not hard to be a pessimist. Oh, no, it's not. And see this deal and say, oh, Libya is even worse. There's no return. We've gone down a dark, dark road. However, these people are just like you and I. And if you can relate to just one of them, I'm positive that social change can and it will happen. I'm going to show you 20 minutes of our film. It's just a short version. We're still working on it. We will have to shoot 2 more scenes with EU officials now, and we believe and complete the editing process. Even though it's taking time, these stories are still timely, and we believe that this is an important piece of history that needs to be documented. We have people from all over the world, different religions and sexual orientations, and hope anyone watching anywhere in this world can connect. And remember, so this refugee crisis ends, or at least something great changes. These are short scenes, and we know the content is very heavy. So there will be short breaks of rappers and singers and gospel music and poetry from inside the camp and barbershop talk to move the story along. The beginning is the trailer, and then after, each scene will fade to black. Sunday, October 14th, this upcoming Sunday, we'll have an event, and I invite you all to come out and see some art, photography, and even more of our film. And this is just an example of one camp. You know, I heard you talk about Rohingya earlier. There's camps like this all over the world that maybe in some ways are worse, but I think what we're trying to focus on is how politicians are dickering around with people's lives. And that this is known, and the way that these people are treated, it's known. They know it, and at any point they can stop it. Before I start the film, I want to leave you with this poem by Warsan Shire, a Somali-British writer, called Home. Have you heard it? Okay. No one leaves home unless home is the mouth of a shark. You only run for the border. When you see a whole city running as well, your neighbors running faster than you, breath bloody in their throats, the boy you went to school with who kissed you dizzy behind the old tin factory is holding a gun bigger than his body. You only leave home when home won't let you stay. No one leaves home unless home chases you, fire under feet, hot blood in your belly. It's not something you ever thought of doing until the blade burnt threats into your neck. And even then you carry the anthem under your breath, only tearing up your passport in an airport toilet, sobbing as each mouthful of paper made it clear that you wouldn't be going back. You have to understand that no one puts their children in a boat unless the water is safer than the land. No one burns their palms under trains beneath carriages. No one spends days and nights in the stomach of a truck feeding on newspaper unless the miles traveled means something more than the journey. No one crawls under fences. No one wants to be beaten, pitied. No one chooses refugee camps or strip searches where your body is left aching or in prison. Because prison is safer than a city of fire, and one prison guard in the night is better than a truckload of men who look like your father. No one could take it, no one could stomach it, no one's skin would be tough enough. The go home blacks, refugees, dirty immigrants, asylum seekers, sucking our country dry. N-words with their hands out, they smell strange, savage, messed up their country, and now they want to mess up ours. How do the words, the dirty looks roll off your backs? Maybe because the blow is softer than a limb torn off, or the words are more tender than 14 men between your legs, or the insults are easier to swallow than rubble, than bone, than your child body in pieces. I want to go home, but home is the mouth of a shark. Home is the barrel of a gun, and no one would leave home unless your home chased you to the shore, unless your home told you to quicken your legs, leave your clothes behind, crawl through the desert, wade through the oceans, drown, save, be hunger, beg, forget pride, your survival is more important. No one leaves home until home is a sweaty voice in your ear saying, leave, run away from me now. I don't know what I've become, but I know that anywhere is safer than here. So when you watch this, I want you to look into those people's eyes and just picture yourself. Because most of those people that we interviewed were just like you and I. They were doctors, they were attorneys, they were students, garbage men, artists, rappers, singers, barbers, and at any point that could be you in that camp. And I think it's important to remember. And in order for you to connect with those people, that's how I know that social change will happen, and this stuff Moria won't exist anymore, places like Moria won't happen. The incredible thing about my generation is that we're empowered and we want to create change. We can't sit back and let this happen anymore. You made an incredible point that we're living in a day and age where there's people that are coming out of the woodwork. It's a fascist culture. You know, I was punched by a Greek Nazi when I was shooting this documentary. I didn't even know they existed. Our eyes have to be open and we have to be mobilized. And whether it means quitting your job in television, local news, and moving to a refugee camp to see something more, that's what it's gonna take. But I encourage you all to do whatever you can. You have a voice, so use it. So we're gonna show a little bit of the film, and I don't know if we'll have time for a question and answer after, but I'll be around, and you can find us all on social media. Thank you.
Commence à prier. Nous sommes venus à la rencontre de Dieu. Nous sommes venus dans sa présence. Oh, dis à Dieu merci. Dis à Dieu merci. Si je vis, c'est parce que tu l'as voulu. Voilà pourquoi dans ces instants, j'aimerais que tu réalises que toi-même tel que tu es là, tu n'es pas un fruit d'hasard.
What we have seen in our clinic is people who are genuinely in mental health distress and they need support. They should not be treated like this. No human person should be treated like this.
The tensions, the riots that happen, like children shouldn't be seeing that. Women should, you know, I understand that the women don't feel safe in the dark. And sometimes things do happen, so we try to protect people as much as we can. It's not 100% safe, unfortunately.
The hardest to digest is the level of inhumanity here. You don't have the resources to be cared for here in a medical sense. When people say that there's 80% psychological trauma cases here in Moria, I don't doubt it.
I was responsible for Moria. I would be embarrassed by the way it's being run.
I think we are witness to a very big moment in a very critical time in our history again. Many decades from now, People will look back at this. This is the time to take sides. You can't just be a passive observer to this.
This stuff has been here for so long, and nothing's being done. It's just become a tourist attraction. That's what people have become, tourist attractions. This pain and suffering is a tourist attraction. That's sick. It's crazy to think that a lot of these life jackets have been here for nearly 3 years. And these piles just keep getting bigger and bigger. Symbolic for me because they're stagnant. They're not moving. Just like the people on this island, these asylum seekers, they're not moving.
Who is the most annoying person in this? That's still, and she's jealous because he's now the baby.
شكرا.
وليش لازم العالم يهتمون بمخيم موريا؟
كم يوم بنية حكم عن هذه المشفقة أصابت بالتهاب الكبد. كم شهور هبت تبين.
وكانت وقت
كل لون غير بلد نطلع لها. alone.
Yeah.
If you get raped here, you get empiric treatment for STDs, and you don't get offered HIV testing, and other testing that you should be offered is syphilis testing. People get referred on to the Greek public healthcare group here in Moria. And by that time, obviously, things could be much prolonged, not to mention the trauma from being raped.
The medical system. Normally, there is a hospital in Mytilene that can afford, say, almost 60,000 people, which is the island population. So I think another 10,000 makes it difficult. So that's why I said from the beginning that we didn't have any help in the beginning. Yes. You can think how these people can live with minus 2 or 3 degrees, which will be in January and February in the tents. Is it possible? So that's why we need help from EU and from the government, so that these people can go.
Unlike other places, what we see here is political and policy driven, and you have a sense that a lot of the things could change and could be improved. Like the suffering that we witness on a daily basis could come to an end if there was political will, if there was political commitment. When you say, how can we help you, what do you want? He said, I want freedom. So it's also difficult for us because we are a medical organization, of course, and we're trying to provide medical support. But what people actually need and what they want is this. They want to be able to continue with their lives. They want to be able to continue the journey. They want to feel safe again and human and restore their dignity. Some of them want to reunite with their families. If the decision makers at the EU level tomorrow decided to end this, they could. But then they'll say, no, we don't want to change this because then more people will come.
من أيام أمريكا والعراق. تمام. He said The Jew was between Iraq and US. He was dead and he had injury in his eye. تمام.
المرة الثانية ضربني طلقة من هنا واحد من هنا.
And next time had two gunshots in his arm.
أنا سويت عملية.
عملية شو؟
نظرتها.
في دقيقة بطلع؟
واحد من يدي واحد من البطن.
And he had also gunshot in the abdomen and we did surgery to remove it. Like you see now. تمام خلاص كده. وبعدين
يعني ضربني مركب معرض أمريكا بيومها.
And he said that's the gunshot me the government is I don't know exactly if they are from ISIS or America. داعش أو بدكم فجر بالضبط.
Hey, do you guys sleep Olive Grove or do you sleep in Moria?
We sleep in Moria.
Everyone's in Moria?
Always we always. In my room there are 22 people.
In one ISO box?
In one ISO box.
22 beds?
Yes.
No space. Can imagine.
No, there's supposed to be less than 10 in one ISO box.
Okay, we are 22.
The hardest thing for me being in Moria has been hearing the stories of African men being raped in their home countries and then in Turkey. I know many of you have heard these stories. Many of you have experienced it. What do you think the world needs to know about that? How can that change? How can that stop?
The world needs to do something about Turkish police because they feel so superior. They don't really care about, most especially the blacks. They treat us inhumanely. Most of black people from Turkey, who's been in Turkey, suffer violence from police, Turkish police. Most.
That's including sexual assault?
Most especially sexual assault. I'm a victim of that. I used to pull on earrings both years. It started from the day that happened to me in Turkey, because probably they saw me as one of them who took advantage of that. Since from then I don't do that anymore. And I had this phobia of men, white men especially. So I think the world really needs
When did that happen?
That was about 2 months ago, because I've been here for 5 months. Yeah. 2 months ago, while I was trying to cross the border.
The Turkish police did this?
Yeah.
5 months, I don't get work. Somebody told me, you take me to Izmir, I will get work there. When I get there, they took me to some warehouse. I was working for 5 months without pay. They just give me food. 12 o'clock afternoon, give me food. In the night, they give me food. 7 o'clock, that's it. For 5 months.
So you were a slave?
I was a slave. He told me the person sold me to him $1,000. So once he realized I came there, helped me to run away.
Someone, how did you escape?
The Syrians, someone from the Syrian guy. He came there working, he saw me, I told him my story. He said he will help me to run.
Most important thing that needs to happen in Moria is to let everybody go. That is the most important thing. Because we are stuck. And nothing good is coming out of it. And nothing good is being doing out of it for it to change. We haven't seen any change. Some people have been here for more than a year. And if you ask them, they tell you what you are facing now is the same thing they faced years before. So, what is the need of Moria?
Very worst. We tried to arrest us. 13 times. 31 times. Without counting how many times we ran away from the bush. If it come to the point that John, if he had the word, he was control. It says I was traumatizing to see me and my 2-year-old in prison for no reason. 13 times. Sometimes you can spend a month, sometimes you can spend 15 days, 55 days, sometimes you can spend 40, sometimes you can spend 15, it depends how you want to.
Basically, I think all of the moment I step on the field, I forget about everything. So football is basically what's keeping me going.
So, my name is Jules Rufus. I'm 36 years of age and I'm not ready. I saw the title Ocean. You call me out upon the waters, the great unknown, where feet may fail. And there I found you in the mystery, in oceans deep. My faith will stand. Spirit leads me where my trust is without borders, and my faith will be made stronger in the presence of my Savior. Spirit leads me where my trust is without borders. Let me walk upon the waters wherever you will call me. Take me deeper than my feet could ever wander, and my faith will be made stronger in the presence of my Savior. Hallelujah. Jesus is Lord.
Very bad time when I come to keep in the boat, and the water's coming inside. This is difficult.
None of your brothers and sisters at all are in any other country?
No.
Everyone is gone?
This place is called the Life Jacket Graveyard. It's a pretty ironic name. You can see thousands and thousands of life jackets and small rafts that people came here on from Turkey. Many people think that, heard it over and over again, that this image is overrated, this place is overrated, it's out of place. But what comes to mind for me is that it's out of sight, out of mind. It's an hour and 15 minutes away from Moria. It's hard to get here. It's in the middle of nowhere, you can't see it from the road. And it makes me think about the people that are living in Moria. They're out of sight and out of mind for the rest of the world. No one's talking about them, no one really cares. So for me, being here for the last 2 months, when I look at these life jackets, I don't just see life jackets. I see everyone that we told you about. I see John. I see Francis. I see Amber. I see those men the 71-year-old man from Iraq, families, those that have been rejected and sent back to their countries. And I see those that to the point where it almost feels disrespectful to even stand on top of these life jackets because you don't know who wore them. And yeah, maybe you forgot. But I think it's time for you to be reminded.
So if you didn't catch it, we're going to be showing a lot, not a lot more, but just like maybe like 10 more minutes of it on this upcoming Sunday, and we'll have artwork from all over the world centered around the refugee crisis, and then 27 sketches from someone that lived in Moria, and you can come and check that out. It's going to be interlocked. We have flyers. But the film, when we're finished, will be an hour, probably about 45 minutes to an hour. We originally thought it would be probably closer to 90 minutes, but that's not going to be the case. So we still have to finish writing the storyline. These were just little snippets, like I said, of scenes, and there's a lot more content, so we just have to pick and choose. But if you have any questions or anything at all, okay.
I'm just interested, what do you think, like what can government officials do to alleviate the suffering in these refugee camps?
Yeah, like I said, I think that you can take this as a model for others, but there are some that are operating, I guess, more humanely. Like there's a refugee camp just a couple of miles away from this one called CAHSS, and it runs efficiently, it has lighting, it's clean, people aren't as miserable, there's a whole lot less, but it's run by the local governments and nonprofits. So when you see, and it runs with way less money. So when you look at the accountability of that camp and the way that everyone kind of works together and can create something from very little, I think that that's a good model. But also reevaluating the EU-Turkey deal. People are coming more dangerous ways, like we mentioned. Just in short, it would take me too much time to go through everything with you. I can, if we have time, we can go back there and I can explain more. But that's like the number one thing, like I said. But obviously, Moria is a place for people to be. There's other camps on the mainland that are very similar. We can speak about Calais in France. There's other refugee camps all over the world that are similar, and so it's just changing, I guess, going to the root of the problem, which is within the countries. And like I mentioned, there has to be accountability. Earlier he was thinking about colonialism and the effects of that on different countries, and walking away from them and letting them just be, I think is part of their problem, as well as, our influence in different places. Like that young man at the very end that talked about his entire family being killed. His whole family was killed in a U.S. airstrike, and he was the only one to survive, and he was in his first year of dentistry school. And so it's like, what do you do with that? Collateral damage. We don't ever talk about that. But I think Turkey is a big part of the problem as well, and this deal that was signed. Things got worse. This was a transit camp. People would just be there for a couple of weeks. Now there's people that have been there stuck there for years. You just had a friend, was it 2 years, more than 2 years, he was there